Hi, this is JP Morgan. Today on the Sidelines, we're in Iceland, and I brought with me what I feel is the perfect trinity, travel trinity, of 3 lenses because I'm trying to pack light that allows me to do all the things that we're going to encounter here in Iceland. Everything from animals and birds to the buildings to just the grandeur of this place. Now this trinity of 3 lenses is really built on how Julian and I travel. We travel on our own, we're not in tour groups. We're a lot of times going to be out doing things, more active kinds of things. So we're in the city, we're out looking at these kinds of national parks, we're in a lot of different places. So I want a trinity of lenses that is going to cover everything that we're doing. And especially I want to be able to shoot animals, birds, anything that we come in contact wildlife-wise when we're in national parks or when we're out on our own. One of the first stops we made was we photographed some puffins. And it was just fabulous and fun. It was stinking wet and rainy, but it was a lot of fun. I learned that the plastic bag I had brought to get my hands into work was pretty restrictive, so I just took the bag out of the trash can at the hotel, shoved it on the end of this, clamped off the lens shade, tore the bag open, and I got it over my hands, and I was able to keep the camera nice and dry and shoot. Yes, Sony, I kept your A1 nice and dry while I shot. So let's take a look at those 3 lenses that I'm bringing with me. And the first one I'm going to talk about is the 150 to 500 millimeter lens. Most people are going, what? You carry a 150 to 500 millimeter lens? I can't go anywhere without it. This 150 to 500 millimeter lens is very hand-holdable. It's got VC, so it allows you to settle into your hands. It's going to really give the ability to shoot on a slower shutter speeds. Surprisingly, for the size, as compact as it is, it's very sharp and gives you great image quality. It's easy to handhold. It's fast to use. The autofocus is incredibly fast. I'm shooting these birds coming in, and I'm shooting on high speed here on the A1, and it's following them in as they come in. This lens also gives you some macro capabilities because it focuses up to 23.6 inches. So the moisture-resistant construction and the fluorine coating on this lens is going to make it much better for shooting out in a situation like this. We were shooting it in the rain a lot. I was glad to have that. So this lens comes with an Arca Swiss plate on the bottom. It's built in, which is great. I've been using that on that Fotopro gimbal. It just hooks right in, locks in, and it's perfect. I also can put pins in this if I want to allow it to keep from sliding out. It has the safety pins you can put in it, which gives you the ability to set those pins in it so it won't slide off the gimbal. Also, it's got a lens hood. It's got that rubberized lens hood. It's got the rubberized edge of the lens in case you bump it on something, so it's not going to hurt your lens. So the autofocus integrates perfectly with Sony. I'm seeing on the puffins, I'm seeing the eye of the puffin. I get the eye tracking is on. That's working wonderfully. I'm able to track the puffins. So it's really using all of the autofocus features of the Sony camera, the A1. It's keeping up with it and done a great job. I love the autofocus limiter on these kinds of lenses because it just gives me the ability to restrict the distance that motor's trying to move the lens. I don't have to have it all the way from infinity to 23 inches. I can limit it to 3 meters to infinity, and that's going to cut down the area it has to travel and makes it autofocus a lot faster. And generally speaking, the animals I'm shooting are a little ways away. They're going to be more than 9 feet, and so I hope I can get closer to 9 feet, but if not, generally speaking, it's not. It gives me the ability to focus a lot faster. Anyway, that's my first lens. I'm going to take a 150 to 500 millimeter lens. This is on that Sony platform. I'm shooting with the A1, and I will not just shoot animals with that, but a lot of times I will start looking at scenics. If I've got a distant kind of a house, it stacks the background. It brings the mountains in, which is really interesting to see on some of the different kinds of Icelandic homes. It's great for cutting into scenics, little sections of areas. I find it really fascinating to work with. I love having a lens that allows me to do wildlife and interesting kind of landscape with that telephoto lens. So that's the first one of my trinity. Second one of my trinity is I have fallen in love with the 35 to 150. It's a 228 lens by Tamron. It's a great walk-around lens. If I'm going to do any kind of portrait work, that lens is perfect for portrait work. So I'm not bringing the 28 to 75, I'm bringing that 35 to 150. It just gives me a 228. It gives me a lot of options so I can shoot and just everything from portrait kinds of things to some really interesting landscapes and more of that telephoto if I want to bring something in. So that's become my medium walk-around lens I'm carrying with me. This is a 228. Which means at 35, you're at about f2. When you go to probably 45 or 50, you go to 2.8, and throughout the rest of the lens, it's 2.8. Okay. This really is a professional lens. It gives you fast autofocus. It gives you a very fast speed. 2.8 is an excellent for a zoom lens. Is really an excellent range. And it also gives you some macro capabilities. It's going to be it's a 1 to 5.7 which means you can get to about 13 inches with this. You can get fairly close. That's going to give you a macro magnification. This one is really interesting because it does have the port, so you can plug this into your computer and you can customize this lens. You can customize the direction of focus. You can customize all the things that you want to use and work with this lens through Tamron's software. It's not as lightweight, obviously, as that smaller 17 to 28. It's a beefier lens, but it just gives you a great walk-around lens to be able to use on location and to give you a range of subject matter from 35, to macro to 150 millimeters. It does have VXD, which is Voice Coil Extreme Torque Drive. Say that 10 times in a row. But that makes it screaming fast when it comes to autofocus, which is really useful when you're shooting with a lens like this. I've photographed people with this lens. I've photographed just walking around all through Iceland. Excellent all-around lens, and gives me a lot more flexibility than say a 24-70 or a 28-75. And that's what I think is really appealing about this. Broader range, macro capabilities, and just a great professional lens. Then the last lens in this group is I definitely need the 17 to 28, that 2.8. It's a wide lens if I want to be in town, get some of the buildings. Just gives me a beautiful shot. I did some incredible shots at the waterfall. This is a double waterfall. It was seen in Game of Thrones. We shot some images there with that lens. It gave me the ability to see that entire vista in one shot, not have to panel that together, because sometimes when you're doing water and it's giving long exposure, doing a panel doesn't look real good on the waterfall because it starts to be hard to stitch those when there's water involved. This is that series of lenses that Tamron put out. 67 millimeters on the front, lightweight. All of the controls like autofocus and things like that are controlled inside the camera, so it's very, very lightweight and small. It's so simple to put in my pocket and to carry with me, but it gives you a lot of great options. It's a 17 to 28 on a full frame sensor. It has an aperture range of 2.8 to 22. It's got the B-bar and the fluorine coating, so it's going to be good for flare and those kinds of things. It's just a great lightweight, in your bag, carry with you kind of lens. It's got the XDF stepping autofocus motor, so the autofocus is very fast. This just turns out to be an excellent, simple, lightweight lens. It gives me basically some macro capability and 17 to 28. So there's that little 17 to 28. Great little pocket lens. This was an unexpected treat. We came upon this place called Iceberg Lagoon. These icebergs are coming off Europe's largest glacier right here behind us. And so these icebergs are coming off into this lagoon and floating right out to the ocean. It's pretty amazing. So I definitely grabbed the 17 to 28 millimeter. I'm going to come and shoot some stitch here. I wanted to be as wide as possible. This is just a great panel. I'm going to stitch together several images and just be able to put this together in one large panel. I'm going to let my exposure just follow the meter, which means it's going to be underexposed, because anytime you look at something this white, the meter's going to try to make it 18% gray, and that's okay. I'm going to let it underexpose it slightly, because now that gives me a lot of detail on all the whites in the background and allows me to recover those when I go back into Photoshop. So we have been trying out on this trip a backpack from Atlas. So that backpack gives me a camera bag inside, but it also gives me the ability to put my jackets, my hats, my other things, my snacks and things around it on the back side, which really is a great way to work. It was fascinating being in Iceland because it was just such a different cultural type experience. We're from Los Angeles. Iceland's entire population does not exceed the population of Burbank and Pasadena, which are two little cities in the larger metropolitan LA area. So it was just a lot fewer people than what we were used to. But it was wonderful. The weather was cold, the scenery was absolutely stunning, the people were wonderful. It was a great experience. We really enjoyed being there. We got some great images, and we put that travel Trinity to the test. And you know what? It turned out to be way better than what we had thought it was going to. It just gave us a great range to be able to work with. That 35 to 150 became a walk-around lens that I used most of the time. I kept the 17 to 28 in my pocket, because when I would get in town walking around, I wanted something a little broader to be able to shoot the buildings, take pictures in the city. And then, of course, anytime I was doing wildlife, I'm on that 150 to 500 millimeter lens. So it's a Trinity that gives you a wider angle of view from long 500 millimeter telephoto to a 17 millimeter wide angle. Just a great workaround series of lenses. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it gave you a great perspective. And in the future, this is what I'm going to travel with. So leave us a comment. Tell us what you think. And keep those cameras rolling. Keep on clicking.